For Omerta, the first thing that comes to my head is snitches get stitches. And among my that is actually kind of funny. What I have is 3 quotes. The first one is from Best State. He did a lot of research on the mob and criminal behavior throughout history. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that and a moral code that glorifies it. Then from 2 better known ones, run from a knife and rush a gun.
I've heard that one.
Be careful who you call your friends. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. Thank you, Mr. Toast.
Nice. Thank you so much, Tom. This theme is for sure. Our jester, Ismail, do you have a jest, possibly about the mobs? So unmute yourself there, Ismail.
Sorry about that. I was so excited. I was so ready, and then I heard. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The mob is, Omerta. It's what goes on in the mob stays in the mob. So my joke is going to reflect that. Father asks his son, if the police come to us and they're looking for money, what are you going to do? And the son says, or he said, where are you going to hide the money? And the son says, the casino. And the dad says, that's a good job, son. So later on, he's telling all of his friends, and they why. And he says that we learned in school that the police are not allowed to perform illegal searches in Caesars.
Ah,
So
very
he was
nice.
keeping the omerta about
I see the word as well. Our timer, Michael Licata. What are you doing for us today, Mike?
Good morning, Mr. Toastmaster, Toastmasters, and our guests. One quick mob story I have is Len mentioned the Magadino family, and I'm fortunate enough to study under Lee Coppola, who actually had mob informant Mafia, and he was actually portrayed in a mini series that came out in the 90s. So he is the foremost expert on the mob. My job this morning is to make sure that everyone comes into time. I have a tablet with the normal Toastmasters timer this morning, and everything is timed, and I will check that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, round of applause. Our Jester Master, one of our newer members, Beth Bank. What are you doing today in your role of Jester Master?
I will be looking for gestures and how things, which is a little bit difficult on this with the tiny little people, but I will try to be looking for good gestures, what makes your speaking better, okay? And so we did look up online Beth Smiley, and I am co-owner of a speakeasy.
Nice. Thanks for playing along, Smiley.
And I have a covenant.
We run the speakeasy together.
Kate being a speakeasy owner, Kate and Beth being speakeasy owners, I don't see that at all somehow. Very nice. We have a battle for quiz day. Alexis responded to my emails, and Larry signed up. Who would like to arm wrestle for this one?
I believe that Alexis would be a good candidate.
Larry? Okay, so Larry will bow out to Alexis. So tell us what your role as quizmaster would be.
I had to go online and get my mob name, and that was a lot of fun. It was Alexis Blue Eyes Rivera. And
Nice.
and so the omerta is extremely important and part of my duties. And I was a singer in this speakeasy. So
Nice.
as quiz master, I'll be asking questions about various things that I hear to see who's paying attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Look forward to your report later. So before I go into introducing the evaluators and the speaker, let's talk about a few mob movies. We have a lot of those. Oh, screen again here. Assistance, please, if we could get. There we go. So the Godfather series is definitely the biggest mob series there is. Who could forget these guys with the horse head right in the middle of the bed, murdering left and right, all the amazing quotes. They're long, but if you can tolerate long movies, they're good. Scarface, introducing him to his little friend, right? Al Pacino. Chainsaw scene in the shower, bloody as could be. The Untouchables, definitely a good movie. I know Eric is a fan of this movie, and Carol is as well. Not going to talk too much about it, but definitely a good flick. And the more current one on Netflix was The Irishman, also long, talking about possibly what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, if you're interested. But they have Joe Pesci, De Niro, Al Pacino. These are all great mob guys. Mob guy actors, should we say. There's so many of these movies, so many different things you could talk about in regards to this, but there are a few out there that would be of interest. Okay, so we'll go back to our regular screen. And I will also talk about another movie, Donnie Brasco, which I didn't get a clip. He was like an FBI informant for years. He is a great movie on that too. Don Wahlberg is involved with that one. So our first evaluator for speaker is, let's see, Mark Campos. In contact with Ryan Flore, and you can talk about what he's going to talk about today. Mark Campos.
I did, Mr. Toastmaster, but far be it from me to question you, but table topics first.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Margo's like, what about?
No, I figured you'd just put me at the end.
This is what happens when your printer's on the fritz. I write out the list here. So thank you for keeping me in order here. Margo today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. First of all, welcome, Joe Budnick. I saw you logging. So we have another guest.
Howdy.
Hi, Joe. So everyone remembers, timing topics is 1:30 to 2 minutes, and Mike will give you the buffer of 15 seconds either way. Do remember to use the word omerta, and I guess I'll start with a softball since Gerald ordered a little bit. So nicknames are very common. When I've written murder mysteries, every time we've had names, as Nancy can tell you. She's had a few of them. Tom's had a few of them. So I heard Lucky, Luciano, others. So I was wondering, Moklis, if you were a gangster, what nick? Why?
If I were a gangster, I would be a god. Who has the most power in the universe? Has to be God.
Mhm.
But I did pick a nickname in early days, 10, 20 years ago. Nickname was Ganesha. Anybody know what the meaning of Ganesha is? Hindu deity or god that has the elephant head and human body. He or she is also considered the goddess of wisdom and energy. I don't think I encountered those, but I feel Ganesh. Back to the mob. When I came to know there was this fellow by the name Magadino. And as I talked around, I find a lot of people know Magadino personally. He had personality in this region, although he was centered around Niagara Falls. Mobs are like gods because they both help society and also take care of business in their own way. God do, right? I mean, God gives us pandemics, wars, battles, disease. Everything comes from God. We just have to endure and fast for doing what is right. I think life is a blessing. Every person in the universe is important, and we hope everybody loves somebody else. Thank you, Miss Topic Master.
Thank you, Mokla. So my first exposure to the mob was through Bugs Bunny. He has 3 mob cartoons. Racketeer Rabbit was from the 1930s, and in the 90s he had Bugs and Thugs and Bugsy and Muggsy. Now in Muggsy, he got Muggsy to pull the arm on a slot machine, and the lemons came out, got lemons, not coins. So Larry, if you were going to pull the arm, the slot machine, what would you want to come out other than money? Larry McKenzie.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. If I were to pull a slot machine, what would I like to come out? Well, growing up in Niagara Falls, I actually knew quite a few of the Magadino family and went to school with some of them. Around the corner where I grew up on Pine Avenue, which was also considered Little Italy. And around the corner from my house on 16th and Pine Avenue, there was a little storefront. In that storefront, they used to actually have tombstones, and supposedly the business was for purchasing tombstones. But the windows were all blacked out, and they had 4 or 5 tombstones in front of the window. It turns out that that business was actually a little speakeasy in some respect, because it's also where they had the back door in the alley where everyone would go in and they would have card games and the craps tables. And that was basically the little casino, which was in my neighborhood. They did not have slot machines, but if they would have had slot machines, I'm quite sure they would not be paying out, because I think a lot of the people that left that establishment for one reason or another did not walk out with all the money they walked in with. And that's typical whenever you attend or go to a casino, because basically if you're going there to try and be a millionaire or to win something, you're not going to have that. So if I were to play a slot machine and I would want something else to come out of it, I believe that I would want it to actually, when I pull that lever, to give me some shots of tequila that would make me feel really happy about putting that money in there, because after the fact, I would have nothing to show for it except for a happy time, especially if it was just like the other day, Cinco de Mayo. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics, or Miss Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Larry. So mobs, though, tend to be associated with negative. crime. Now, there's a new gang in Niagara County that some of you may have heard of. It's the Wine Fairy. And these people go around and leave bottles of wine for other people just to say, and some people are getting very elaborate about it. So, Flavia, you up for
God,
this?
well, we'll find out.
Okay, so you're in charge of a gang. It does something positive. And don't forget to use the word of the
Omerta.
day and stick within time.
Yeah. Well, what I deliver? Well, right now being home 4 days a week and bored out of cooking and baking. So I guess it would be the baking bun. You know, I have stuff to make cinnamon buns after this is over. So one thing when you're living up where it's cold, you got to put on a few pounds to keep the cold away. So, you know, and because so careful where I work, there's a lot of omertà there. We have to bring all our stuff in so people can see it. So a nice covered bowl with a lot of baked goods goes really far. Because, you know, it is a line, and, you know, there's the stereotype, believe me. It's the coffee and that are running around that place, to say the least. So, yeah, so we're go around, we'll give people something nice and sweet to eat, and then take our cars and go sit to the beach, park, and watch the waves come in off the lake. That's so we can get through this time together. So it's our little pact to stay together. Okay.
All right. Flavia. Mr. Timer, may I have a timer's report, please?
Thank you, Madam Madam Table Topics Master. Vocals came in at 2:12, in at 2:08, and Flavia came in at 1:33.
Okay, everybody. However, I need a wordmaster's report as well. So how did Omerta do so far this morning,
So
Tracy?
it started off great where Tom, Thomas, Ishmael, Beth, Alexis, all used it. However, when it came to table topics, Flavia was the only one who used it twice.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Flavia. I guess we're not going to be voting. Congrats, Flavia.
Nice, welcome back.
And I will turn it now back over to our Toastmaster. Gerald, take it over.
Okay, Argo. Speaking of Niagara Falls, my connections in the past with the Niagara Falls Mafia. When she was growing, believe it or not, in her house, she had a mirror that you could pull open in a wall, and there was a tunnel that went under the falls. They brought liquor there back in the Prohibition days. She would go down there, and her grandfather played cards and smoked cigars with a bunch of roughneck guys, we'll say. And she would shoot out of there many times. She would lecture them about not eating dinner properly at a proper time and not doing all the proper table manners that she was taught as a young lady. So my wife had a connection with, back on 15th Street, Larry may know where that is, and apparently the building isn't there anymore, sadly. It'd be kind of fun to see if it was still a tunnel. So that's pretty neat. At this point in the meeting, I'd like to introduce Mark Campos as our first evaluator for Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests. Good morning. Before I introduce Ryan, I feel compelled to just thoughts about today's meeting theme because I'm enjoying it so much. You mentioned the Dapper Don, John Guy. He is from pretty much my neighborhood in Queens, and he used to have a social club on 101st Avenue, which is just a few blocks away from where I lived. 4th of July party with fireworks and all that sort of stuff. Needless to say, in the neighborhood, we knew all about the Omerta. And I also have to share, my oldest daughter had a boyfriend, one I didn't think of, but he was absolutely convinced that since I was from downstate and I had a little bit of an accent, certain words came out funny, and that I was 50% Italian, that somehow I had somewhat connected and I wasn't one to be messed with. Needless to say, I found this to be very useful. I never really set him straight, so it was a little bit fun in that regard. And lastly, my family have been having a great time rewatching The Sopranos, introducing my 19-year-old daughter to it. What an incredible that was. Anyway, back to Ryan. Ryan is working from Pathways, a project called Make Connections Through Networking. His purpose statement is for the member to develop and practice a personal strategy for building connections through networking. Purpose of this speech is for the member to share some aspect of his or her experience networking. Mr. Timer, his time is 5 to 7 minutes. And Mr. Toastmaster, do you have the title?
Let's see.
If you don't, I have it.
I do have the title.
Okay, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thanks so much, Mark. Ryan's title today is Connecting in a Digital World. Ryan, are you ready? Ryan.
Mr. Can you hear me? That's step one. Okay.
I can hear you.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters.
Morning, Ryan.
In networking,
morning.
There is no room for an omertà. The idea is that you talk to, communicate, and connect with as many people as possible in an efficient manner, in a way that makes you memorable, and in a way where later on they'll remember your name. The phrase connected like Legos. I think everyone here knows someone with that reputation. If we think back to our earlier days in elementary school, it was that kid, maybe at the end of the table, maybe around the corner. He always had that extra carton of chocolate milk. When you looked to high school, there was always one kid with a fake ID. He knew everybody. He knew every connection. By college, it was whoever could get you into an event, into a party, into a house. When we link it to the mob, it was the boss's consigliere. It was the right-hand man, fount of knowledge. But by the time we're adults, it's become a little bit different, but with the same undertones. It's the person that knows everyone. Maybe as you're walking down the street and they know everyone and they wave at everyone, or maybe everyone waves at them. And as you look at them wondering, how on earth do you know this many people? They might have no idea who that person was that waved at them, but it always comes to them later. They've run into so many people, talked with so many people, and had so many stories and conversations over their many or their few years that it just seems like everyone gets them and everyone knows them. Maybe it's a free game, / free concert, / show tickets. Somehow they get a free drink at every bar. Everyone by now can picture a person or two in their life that fits this description. Maybe it's you. If it is you, you might even be wondering what on earth got you to this point in your life. If it isn't you, I bet you're asking yourself right now, how on earth did that person manage to do that? How did you connect to so many people? How did you remember that many names, that many important events? How did you even know their children's names? Maybe they're extroverted. Maybe they have a great memory. Maybe they've just talked to them so many times that it's like second nature. But everything that I've mentioned to this point is all person-to-person contact. It's all running into people that you know. It's all conversing and recalling memories together. What about now? COVID-19 has done a lot of things. We can argue about the benefits and the pros and the cons, but one thing that is for certain is that it's brought changes. And in those changes come a much more separated physically world. When we start to think about your typical networking event, we picture a happy hour at a local bar. Maybe we picture a gathering at a library or theater or club. Everyone's there, shaking hands, introducing themselves, talking to others. There's a famous, almost useless topic out there called the elevator speech. And in it, you're supposed to take 10 to 30 seconds to briefly run through a litany of things that you can do, have done, and why you should be remembered. But the reality is that people don't remember you for your 10 to 15 second elevator speech. They remember you from the stories that you tell, from your nature in interacting, and your humor, good or otherwise. We all know the best teller of dad jokes. We all know the worst teller of dad jokes. But the idea is that now as we go through and we try to figure out how to do this in a digital world, the platforms have all changed. We can't shake hands. We can't walk the hotel lobby. We can't go out to a club or a bar and meet people. So how do we do it? Really great question that we're only really scraping the surface of right now. Oftentimes, I would interact with wholesalers. Several times a month, I would get contacted by people that want me to sell their products to other people. It's a fairly typical thing, and it's always worth maybe an open bar, free dinner, and so taking those meetings. But now, in the digital life, those wholesalers have had to adapt. And in my most recent experience with a wholesaler, they tried to get a room of 50 people in a Zoom meeting. Well, let me tell you, a 50-person networking event stuffed full of salespeople and extroverts is chaos waiting to happen. If you've never kicked a beehive, and I don't recommend it, you might picture the swarm of voice and buzzing and things just coming at you from all directions. 50 extroverts in a room this big, all trying to get their voice heard. I shook my head when I joined, and about 45 seconds later, I left. We have to figure out a better way. And so I reached out to the wholesaler that hosted the event, and I did a one-on-one meeting with them. And in an email weeks later, he said, "Ryan, I really appreciate your feedback, and I really appreciate how you stepped up and informed me, because that meeting actually went on for an additional 45 minutes. I didn't really get anything out of it. I didn't learn anything about any of the other individuals except for a guy that we'll just label Gary, who was loud and boisterous and would always talk over everybody else in order to get his point heard." And so I thought about, really, we're lacking in social niceties when it comes to the digital world. It's an incredible transformation from, again, a hotel lobby where we can move from a group of 2 or 3 people to another group of 2 or 3 people and maintain low volume, indoor voice conversations. And as we look to the worlds of LinkedIn and Zoom meetings and Join Me, and we see the plethora of options available before us, we now have to fine-tune a set of skills that is completely different than what we're used to. And those skills include being able to have an active dialogue one-on-one with a small, tiny black circle at the top of your laptop. You have to show an understanding for technical difficulties. When you're in person, there are no interruptions, pause, screens, lag, time between words and sentences and clipped phrases. There seems to be a lot more repeating necessary in this online digital world. But what I've learned is that it still comes down to the same basic tenets of a conversation. You must be polite You must be on time. You must be confident. And you must be a human. And that last point brings most importantly and most true. Despite everything, despite our 6 feet of distance, despite our new digital world, being able to understand, being able to respond, listen actively, and pick up on conversational cues across a camera and a laptop still brings the close connections that we crave. We just have to be willing to be patient, be kind, and continue to adapt.
Our next speaker will be evaluated by Nancy Ferry. Nancy Ferry, do you get a chance to contact Marty and get some information on his speech so you can introduce him today? Nancy, are you there?
I'm trying to unmute. That's all. I am here. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. We'll be speaking from the Advanced Communicator Manual, Humorously Speaking Manual, I guess the sub-manual. The speaker is to have, is to leave. Speaker is the audience with a smile. The title, do you have his title?
I actually do not have Marty's title.
His title is, Has Anyone Seen Marty? And I will be looking for effective eye contact in the Zoom audience, becoming more effective with rate of speech, story setup, delivery, and pause, and a twist at the end. And who's the timer?
Timer is Mike Licana.
5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Marty Johnston, everybody give him a round of applause.
Thanks to Toastmaster. Has anyone seen Marty? Marty? Marty, where are you? You're up next to speak. Where are you? Oh, here I am. I got my foot in this roll of toilet paper in my toilet paper fort. And that's why I was a couple minutes late getting onto the screen here, Dr. Gerald. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I've been hoarding the commodity of toilet paper, and I built a fort. No, just kidding. Fellow Toastmasters, Mr. Toastmaster, this morning I would like to share with you a few ways that this crazy COVID-19 pandemic has affected my life and the way I do things. And I'd like to start off with the use of this fancy mask that I have. The first day I got it, I put it on like this, and I walked into my boss's, and he said, "Marty, it looks like you have a pair of women's underwear over your face." So what I did, I immediately took it off because I've never worn these before, and I realized that you have to put the whole thing over your head with both pieces of elastic to enable it to cover your nose and your mouth. Now you're fully protected this way. Now it doesn't look like a woman's underwear or something else. I've learned to laugh at myself and try not to be so serious. The second thing that it's taught me how the media, and especially our local and our national media has caused the supply and demand to be all out of whack. And a great example is this item I have, this sanitizer, and I hope none of you are trying to crawl through your screens to get this, because even though it's been in stock at all the major retailers, it's pretty interesting. Some of the local distilleries are making their form of hand sanitizer. Works. It's very strong. It's some of them have more than 80% alcohol. As I said, it worked, but it stinks. It's terrible. Nauseous. Some of you may be able to relate to this other news items about meat, and specifically there's been Purdue and Smithfield packing plants having many major out of stocks because of some confirmed cases of the COVID-19 virus. I don't know about you, but it seems like the majority of the consumers, this news that there's going to be a shortage, will flock to the market, supermarket, and purchase more than what they actually need. And this is causing some out of stock situations at some of these stores. What I've learned in this instance is to kindly tell the customer, I'm sorry we have it today, or we do have this brand, but not the brand you're looking for. Hopefully they understand. In 2018, I received this Distinguished Toastmaster award from then District Governor Ellen Pieklo. I accepted it. Then I explained to her that I already received my DTM in 2017. She said, Marty, keep it. This is where the Omerta, or the covenant, must have come in with Ellen Pieklo and I. Ellen, I kept the plaque, the award, even though I hadn't earned it yet, the second DTM. But by me keeping it, and her words of just keep it, has encouraged me to now be working on a second DTM. As crazy as some of you think it is, I have a lot of the leadership requirements, credits for that. So right now I'm working on a lot of the communications projects. Fellow Toastmasters, through this crazy COVID-19 pandemic, has changed my life at work and at Toastmasters. I've learned to be encouraging, not to discourage. I've developed attitude, and I'm hoping that'll get me through this crazy time. Mr. Toastmaster.
Jackie, I know you contacted Carol, because I talked to Carol. So could you tell us what she's going to talk about today?
Carol is going to try storytelling today. She's working on a Pathways project, Connect with Storytelling. She wants to have her speech flow smoothly as she's telling us this story and control us. So she's going to give us a 5 to 7 minute story this morning. Looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you, Jackie. Carol's title is The Untouchables. Carol Halstead, please welcome her.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster and guests. There's talk of the mob. The movie that most people think of is The Godfather. However, in my case, it's always been The Untouchables, the 1987 film. The scenes, the music, and the characters just come together to make it such a blockbuster, talking about the era of Prohibition in Chicago. You have Robert De Niro as Al Capone. You have Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness, Sean Connery as the seasoned cop, Jimmy Malone, and Andy Garcia as the rookie cop. One of the first scenes is a little girl walking into, which probably was a drugstore that had a counter to eat at, and she sat down, and there was a man at the other end of the counter, and he had a briefcase sitting in front of him. Well, all of a sudden, the man touched the briefcase, and then he walked out. The little girl looks over and notices it sitting there. And so she ran, picked it up, ran outside and said, "Mister, you forgot your briefcase." And then quite a scene follows that. And then there's Jimmy Malone giving Elliot Ness advice on how to get Capone. And he says, if he brings a knife, you bring a gun. If he sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way. Then there's a big banquet room and this large table. There's Al Capone and all of his cronies together. And Capone has a baseball bat in his hand. And he's walking around the table, kind of gently swinging it. And he says, a baseball team is only successful if everyone is a team player. And he said, if someone isn't, something has to be done about it. And you notice one of them at the table profusely. He may have not stuck to the omertà. So you can imagine what follows that. And then you see Malone's apartment, and you see a couple of guys outside of it. And the view the camera gets you is through each one of the windows. And you watch him walk down the hall through like the kitchen window, the dining room, the bathroom. And then all of a sudden, from the perspective of outside to in, is someone is coming in through the bathroom window. And he walks in, he sees Malone at the end of the hall, appearing like he's putting a record on the phonograph. And this intruder has a knife in his hand, while when Malone turns around, he has a rifle. And he walks through the house after the man with the knife, and just like a wop to bring a knife to a gunfight. And he chases him out, and then he runs right to his doorway and looks out to make sure he left. And then we are at Union Station, and there's having difficulty getting a buggy and her suitcases up the steps. Ness and Stone are there looking for someone. And he does help her, and then amidst a hail of gunfire, the buggy gets out of her hand and goes down the stairs backwards. And then another scene near the end, Ness chases Nettie up to a roof. And the last thing he says to him is, "Did it sound anything like that?" And then he goes back into the building where Stone meets up with him, wants to tell him something. And he says, "Where's Nettie?" And Elliot answers him, "He's in the car." So I do hope that with these illustrations, I have perked your interest in this movie. And so I hope some of you will take time to watch it. And I have a slight connection to Elliot Ness. He died in Coudersport, Pennsylvania, which is very near to where my father was born. And I visited down there a lot in the 50s at the time when he had a massive heart attack and died at the age of 54. And being from Niagara Falls, I have heard of Stefano, the Undertaker, Dino, Mr. Toastmaster.
From Michael Licata.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Marty and Carol Ann came in at time. Unfortunately, Ryan went over, and that is my report. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So hopefully Larry will bring a survey up for you to vote. There it is. So choose the speaker. And if you could also, I'm not going to do that myself so you can see my screen. Also, I have a little bit about Stefan Macadino. My sister actually rented a place from him. He was called The Undertaker. Good job there, Carol, getting that. He actually survived a couple assassination attempts. There was a bomb that killed his sister and a grenade that went through his kitchen window that didn't explode. So he dodged a few attempts on his life. He was known for running alcohol as well. So there's some connections with everybody, and I am originally from Niagara Falls as well. It's amazing how many people we have from Niagara Falls in this club, in my opinion. So that's what I have for that. So the first evaluator, Mark Campos, if you could do your evaluation, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and our guests, good morning. Connecting in a digital world, certainly a great and very timely topic, because that's indeed what we are doing here this morning. This format we're using, the Zoom meetings, changes the way we speak, and not surprisingly, it changes the way we evaluate as well. So my evaluation will be very specific to this particular format. Let's talk about Ryan's strengths first. First and foremost, I thought Ryan's eye contact was really exceptional. Such an incredibly difficult thing. If you're looking at a laptop, as I am, your camera is up high, the screen is obviously lower, your eyes are naturally drawn to the screen, and it's so difficult to stay focused on that camera. But Ryan did a really good job at that, I thought. Facial expressions were really good. Slight smile here and there. I thought that was really excellent. And I think he's got a really smooth speaking style overall. And what I call his pacing of how the speed and cadence of his speech, I thought was, really excellent. Now, given these strengths, I think Ryan could be even more effective in just a few ways. Ryan, I would be mindful about sitting in front of a very bright window. It sort of gave you an overexposed, albeit angelic glow behind you. And I have to add, though, that I just got up and closed the blinds behind me because I realized I was doing the very same thing, and I wouldn't want to be a hypocrite. Additionally, I think another thing that would be helpful is to maybe raise up your laptop, set it back just a little bit, then we could see a little bit more of your gestures a little more clearly, I think. And with regard to gestures, I felt over time you really warmed up in that regard. One thing I would ask you to be mindful of, there was a point where you made a gesture and you parked your hands sort of like this for maybe a good 30 seconds, and that's all I could lock in on. So just something for you to be mindful of. But overall, I thought it was a great messaging, particularly in the conclusion of your speech. I thought the conclusion of your speech was really strong. And lastly, one of the most satisfying things I think about being a Toastmaster is to really watch the growth and progress of members as they spend time in the club. And Ryan, you have indeed made tremendous progress, Mr. Toastmaster.
Ferry, are you ready? Nancy is unmuting.
There we go.
Oh.
Some things are more complicated than others in life. Oh, Marty. Has anyone seen Marty? What a great topic or a title for your speech. It was a fantastic opening, especially for the Zoom venue, hiding down wherever you were hiding and then popping up. I think you did a great job with your setup in preparing for that. The Zoom venue is difficult, and I love the when you returned with the toilet paper and spoke about your toilet paper fort. It's something that we all could identify with. Personally, I decided to avoid that toilet paper mania, and I bought a bidet, so I don't have to go out and collect toilet paper in any way. And also, it's better for the environment. But all that aside, but then you moved into the mask. That was hysterically funny. And again, we could all identify with that new normal routine of masking ourselves, which is uncomfortable and nobody quite knows exactly how to do this. We see people with masks, so unless you're a nurse or something like that. But most of us have to shuffle it around and figure out what to do with it, or have it upside down and inside out. But the ladies' underwear was a great story. I think your rate was, it started off great and then it slowed a bit in the body of your message. You took the opportunity to take some pauses and breathe and not speak so fast that we couldn't catch on. I would suggest that in the message, what you asked me for was a twist at the end. And I was waiting for this great twist, Marty, because I know you've got it in you. You always come up with a twist or a humorous thing. And I was waiting on the edge of my seat, and then I felt it was a bit like a flat tire at the end. It was a little inspirational, but I was disappointed. So work on that ending of some kind of twist. Bring the toilet paper back around, or the mask, or something brand new that we haven't already seen. I'm trying to think of a good example, but your mind is much better than mine. I'm sure you can come up with something better. There was a lot of evidence of preparation. And let's see, I think that's what my report is today. Thank you for allowing me to be your evaluator.
Thank you, Nancy. Our third evaluator today is Jackie Kenny.
I am ready.
Jackie?
Thank you, Gerald. I was so impressed with Carol right at the beginning of her speech when she stood up and started in addressing her topic. I thought it was a very good job, especially for someone who I know is nervous about speaking and is a fairly new Toastmaster. She did an excellent job making eye contact with the eye of her computer. And I was very impressed again with the way that she attacked her storytelling and brought us right into something that she's obviously very in tune with. She loves the Untouchables, and she was excited to share it with us. She conquered her ahs early on. I heard a few, but then she got them under control. She did have a problem connecting her phrases with the word and. So that's the next thing that Carol needs to work on. And I challenge her to get that under control in her next speech. She used time to generate interest in a movie that she's very fond of and used some of the mob mentality, so to speak, that Omerta came in. She used the word of the day early on. I thought she did a very good job tying things together and getting us interested in watching this movie if we've not seen it yet. So Carol Ann was the mob queen this morning. She gave us great references. She shared a classic movie with us. And I decided, rather than look up a mob name for myself, I decided my mob name should be Ma. So good morning, everyone, from your Ma. And thank you for letting me evaluate. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jackie. Could I get a timers report, Mr. Michael Licata?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. All three of our evaluators qualified this morning. Thank you.
Awesome. So take a second to vote for our evaluators. There'll be a poll coming up shortly. So I've had some spare time with the coronavirus epidemic, and I've done some binging on Netflix. And there is a show, it's called Peaky Blinders. It's about the Shelby family in England. And they got a real cool theme song as well, which I think is cool. But they wear those hats that are a little bit flat, and they have a razor in the front of the hat. And I had never seen that before. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And they take the hat and use it as a weapon. And they slice people. And I believe they're called the Peaky Blinder because they probably slice someone's eye. It makes them blind. It's an actual gang. It's played up a little bit, but it's real. They're a real mob gang in England and battling all the different mobs throughout the country. So that's some native license with the show, but they will have a 6th season coming out. So I'm excited when that comes out. So if you have a chance, take advantage of a little time and see the Peaky Blinders. Okay.
Dr.
This
Stevens.
portion of the meet, yes.
Phil here. I have to interrupt.
Go ahead, Phil, yes.
I have a series. It's a series of 3 seasons, 10 parts in each. It's called Ozark. It is definitely a mob theme, and there is no Omerta. It can be gruesome, but I found out at the end that is it a tragedy or is it a comedy? Because when Margot mentioned the movie Bugs Bunny, some of the scenes in there I remember, and they are the same as in Bugs Bunny's. Enough for me. Ozark.
Thank you, Phil. I didn't realize that. Yes, I didn't realize that was a
on
mob
Netflix.
thing. Yeah, I have it on my queue, but I didn't start watching it yet. So I'll definitely move it up in the rank. I'd like to get a few reports at this portion of the meeting. Let's start off with our grammarian, Len Thornton.
Mr. Toastmaster, not a whole lot to report on today. A few things. First of all, my good friend Flavia, you win the Edna Stubbs Award for overusing the word so. You did use therefore at one point, and that was a pleasant change up and appropriately, but work on the so's if you could. Mark had a lot of interesting words and phrases. Compelled, Dapper Don, set him straight. You do tend to use the word really a little bit too often. Work on that. It's a modifier that we slip into everything, and it's really not necessary a lot of times. I like the word cadence you used as well. Ryan used phrases like connect the Legos. That's a very descriptive term. Scraping the surface. He also used a phrase, I would get, I think that should be, I would be contacted. And kicked a beehive. Again, a very visual phrase there. I like that. Marty, hoarding this commodity. That was nice. Gerald, tell us what Carol is going to talk about. I think the word speak would fit better in there. Tell us what Carol is going to speak about today. A talk implies conversation. Speak denotes a speech in my mind. And let's see here. Carol used the word perked your interest. I know you're trying to say piqued your interest, but just watch the phrasing there. Sometimes when we're coming up with a word, a similar one sneaks its way in. It should have been piqued your interest. That's all I have to report, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Len. I will get a Gesture Masters report from Beth if she is ready.
I
Beth,
am ready.
thanks.
I believe I'm on now. Okay.
Sure.
Just a few things like throughout the meeting. Margot, you might want to adjust so you sit back a little farther. There's as close as you are, and there's a couple other people too. If you're too close, we can't see any gestures at all. You're just too close for us to see anything. Ryan, you had some very good ones. The slash was good. The swarm, your indoor voice, that was very good. Marty, I like the disappear, reappear, the hand sanitizer, and I love the gesture stinks when you held your nose. That was good. Carol, I will again, reiterate what your evaluator said. It really was good to stand up so I can see what you're doing. I would have liked to have seen a few more gestures from you or specifics. I liked the Mr. and the baseball bat. You even have swung it around a little bit more, but all in all, I really thought today's speakers were using their gestures appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Beth. An RMS report from Tom Moran.
Yes, let me go on here. I used a couple myself, but I wasn't on the mic at the time, so I didn't count those. There were quite a few ahs and ums, and Flavia's so's were pointed out by our grammarian, so I won't go over that. But I will say something about the ahs and the ums. I noticed a lot of them were used when people were doing something, not speaking, but doing something technical with their program, like trying to move around different screens or to unmute or mute or do whatever. But we had quite a few of them, and we should be more aware of that, because I think in this format they're much more noticeable than when you're in front of a group of people and you're giving a speech. So we need to be very conscious of our ahs and ums and pauses in this environment. So thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Toastmaster, I thought when a few years ago when I got a email from a Gerald Bonecracker, and I thought it was a gangster name. I didn't know who it was, so I thought that was your gangster name.
Don't tell people that, Tom. I'm a hidden mobster. I made the Cardinal Omerta today, and I don't believe I had my general evaluator describe her job duties at all. But Katie did step up as my general evaluator, and hopefully she has a report for us today.
Sure,
Katie.
I do. I signed up online. I thought maybe someone emailed you and told me, or we were going to skip it. But thank you, Dr. Stevens, Bonecracker Stevens, for stepping in last week. For anyone who wasn't aware, he volunteered last week. when we knew our other two on the schedule couldn't do it. So I appreciate you volunteering and also working out your tech issues right in the beginning about the echoing. And go team, go Len, Larry, whoever assisted, that was appreciated. So nice job, Gerald. Thanks for the suggestion to visit the Mob Museum. I didn't see the email to wear yellow, greater name. I will be running the speakeasy with my mom, Smiley. My name is Lemon Yellow because I'm Lemon, and our headliner is obviously Blue Eyes Rivera at our speakeasy. Anyway, I thought that this was a fantastic topic. Ever since you mentioned it during our social hour last Thursday night, I've been excited, and you did not disappoint, along with the rest of our Toastmaster gang here this morning. I appreciate what everyone shared. And I also agree, I was glad you mentioned Peaky Blinders because that is one of my favorite shows. I love Cillian Murphy in the role as Tommy Shelby, and I loved the season that Adrian Brody was in, and he was an Italian-American mafia boss. I loved that. I love that show. In any case, I'd also love you to recommend, I see lots of recommendations going on in the chat bar. As I'm a history teacher, there are a couple of Netflix shows, if any of you haven't seen, that would be more historical, but dive into the history, the Italian history of today's mafia, and just the effects of older Renaissance Italy. And that would be the Medicis and the Borgias. If you haven't watched the Medicis and the Borgias, watch them if you're into these kinds of gang-related or mob-related shows. Anyhow, back to the meeting at hand and our evaluators. I thought all three evaluators did a fantastic job evaluating these speakers. I love how Mark pointed out that the particular virtual format is different, and Mark's vocabulary and language is so rich, and you always sound so intelligent and casual at the same time. I don't know how you do it, but it is exceptional, like you used that word, exceptional. Pacing, cadence, good advice on the light being too bright, although and albeit angelic. But then you also pointed out how we ourselves can learn from evaluating when you noticed your own light being an issue. So I thought that was fantastic. Nancy, I have to say, I just love that you bought a bidet, and I tried to keep paying attention. No, I did. Seriously. I think that we're engaged in Marty's humor. You brought that out. You gave him great advice to end in some stronger way. I agree. And your fan was a bit distracting. That is all I noticed as far as that. Perhaps sit back from your screen slightly, like Mom had mentioned. And Jackie, excellent positive start of being impressed with Carol's start and her eye contact and the excellent chapter hands that string the thoughts together. I love that you called Carol the Mom Queen. Thanks for that, Ma. And I have to say, I'm curious about the books behind you. Maybe during Post Toasties, you can explain that stack of books behind you. I think that's my full report, and I'll hand back to Mr. Toastmaster today.
Thank you for your report, Katie. I would be remiss if I did not have one of our newer members, Alexis, tell us or ask us a form of a quiz. Alexis.
Sure. All right. So if he were a gangster, what would his gangster name be?
God.
God. Why be God?
Ganesh.
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 Oh.
And Ganesh is represented by this animal.
Elephant.
The elephant.
Excellent. Yeah. And Flavia is cooking what?
Cinnamon roll.
Cinnamon roll.
And Mark Campos is rewatching this with his
Sopranos.
And Ryan said that this characteristic is most important now that we're in the digital
Communication,
world.
connections.
Connecting.
No, behavior. Being nice.
Human.
Being
Yes,
human.
yes, that's very important. maintain humanity. Carol said that Andy Garcia played this role in The Untouchables.
The rookie untouchable, the new member of the team.
Rookie, very good. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alexis. Good job.
Good job.
And my last report, I'd love to save the word master for last. Tracy, how did we do with the second half of the
You
meeting?
did well, and I have to tell you, it's Tracy Peanuts Farrell because I'm in competition with Beth. I have my own speakeasy. The word did do well. Mark Campbell's, Carol, Phil Russell, and now you, Gerald, used it after the table fix. And we all know that in Toastmasters, we keep the omertà. What happens in Toastmasters stays in Toastmasters.
Absolutely.
Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tracy. Before we do the awards, I would like to get from our guests. We have a few guests today. Joe Budnack, how do you enjoy the meeting?
Miss everyone. My heart and soul is still with all you guys, and I'm actually glad that we have these little meetings here online so I can connect with everyone. So great today, everyone who spoke. So miss everyone, and I'm happy to see everyone.
Awesome.
You
Well,
too.
it's great to see you. Paula is one of our guests. Paula, how do you enjoy the meeting?
My mob name was given to me by Dave Licata about 35 years ago, which is an Uncle Joy Cozy Sweet.
What?
No, Dave Licata gave me that.
It's Aunt Bungle Joy Cozy Sweet because she's always full of good news and she's warm and inviting and she goes above and beyond to be nice to people. And when I first met her, she was doing extraordinarily nice things that I couldn't, it was freaking me out. So I had to nickname her Aunt Bungle Joy Cozy Sweet.
As I had history with this club. I love listening to all the new people. And I must mention the fact that 35 years ago, really was a word that was brought up constantly. Thank you so much.
And Flavia.
Yeah, everybody again. So I did check it. I am also Moneybags. But okay. You know, so it's just good to get back and you know that you guys are still all out there.
Okay, great to see you as well, Flavia. I don't think I missed any
I'd
guests.
like to have Cecilia join in the conversation.
Cecilia did ring in here. Would you like to make any comments, Cecilia?
Still working with this Zoom thing. The last time I was incognito, but this time I'm not incognito and my sound was off. So I'm still.
Okay, we all are.
Sorry, I missed the invocation. I have the invocation ready, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Gerald.
So great to see you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Toastmasters.
Go ahead, Phil.
Could Dave Licata repeat what his father always said on the Lockport?
No, one day I asked, first thing I want to say is that I once again, I'm not getting the emails and I don't know how we're going to remedy that. I don't understand it because I got emails forever and lately I got a few. I got last week's, but I didn't get this week's, so I don't know what's going on there. But I asked my dad, Carl J. Licata, who was from Sicily. His father was from Sicily. And I said, Dad, you think there's really mafia in Niagara County? And he said, yes, son, there is. But it's not Italian.
Really?
And I
Was there?
can't believe at a meeting it was mob themed. I wasn't called on for anything. My first apartment was at 1264 Pine Avenue, across from St. Joseph's Church, where the FBI would wait for weddings and funerals so they could take census. I sold advertising for WJGL Radio to Peter Magadino, Stefano's son. I got so many stories, but you know what? Next time I'm Toastmaster, I'm going to borrow this theme so I can share all the wealth of stories I have.
Looking forward to
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm excited for the follow-up. Okay, Larry, we get the winners for our meeting today.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gerald. Wonderful
Kenzie.
job as our Toastmaster today. And Dr. Gerald, if you can see right over my shoulder, there is Stefano. Stefano Magadino and all the money. And I did look up my mob name, and it is Larry the Eggman McKenzie. Who'd have thought? All right, we had a wonderful meeting today with a great theme, and our winners today, drum roll please, and the winner of our table topics, Flavia. Flavia was our table topics winner today.
Yay!
Now, our best evaluator, Mark Campos with the win. Mark Campos, our best evaluator today. Thank you.
Win. Yay.
And for our speaker role, our top speaker of the day for the mob theme, and also use the word of the day in their speech, please, a nice round of applause for Carol Ann Halstead. Carol, great job today, our top speaker. And I want to thank everybody for attending our meeting today. And before we adjourn our meeting, we do have a few announcements, and I am going to ask Ryan. Ryan, could you please share your announcement with us?
Absolutely. So those of you who were at the meeting last week know that we did some screenshots and some collaboration to create a flyer for our open house next Thursday, May 14th. So I am now going to share with you the results of that so that we can get this thing published and shared on social media. Let me bring it up real quick here. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. So everybody got to be, a lot of the members got to be involved. We got the join us for our not quite back to work spring open house. We're worth getting up for with the meeting ID, time, and URL. So this will be going out on public airways and social media channels to make sure we get guests next week. Feel free to go to the AM Lockport Toastmasters Facebook page after it's posted to share and get friends, family, etc. involved and invited next week. Thank you, Larry.
One quick quote. One quick quote. Did everybody notice in the last Toastmasters magazine that Toastmasters is teaming up and partnering with Rotary?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
And it might be interesting to invite the people from Rotary into the Toastmasters organization to share ideas.
Tracy Farrell, you're in Rotary, right?
Yes.
Have they mentioned anything about that? It
and
is
they,
exciting.
just before all of this hit, they did mention it. So I think probably next year it would be worthwhile to do a demonstration meeting for it. And I think they would use it as a educational type program because that's part of Rotary, learning how to be
I
better
also got
businessmen.
approached by the downtown Niagara Falls Rotary Club. They have to venture with us, and I keep telling them, come to Lockport, come to Lockport. You can learn fast and good, especially with Zoom. So the downtown, yes.
Muckless, you're the only person from Niagara Falls that knows how to get to Lockport. You charter a bus.
Especially 6 in the morning.
You'll have to charter a bus, Muckless, and put people in there.
Maybe that's what we will do.
Are there any other announcements this morning?
You'll have to.
Yes, I have 2 announcements this
Go ahead, Kate.
morning.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. The first would be the social hour is again happening tonight. Same link as last week, but I'll email that out again. It was great. We had 15 members come and go over the hours last night. In fact, we ended those who lingered and after 10 p.m. We had initially said 7 to 8 p.m., but clearly some of us want to chat and connect, so that was awesome. Second announcement would be, like Tracy just mentioned, thinking about next year and planning and moving forward, our next Toastmaster year starts July 1st. I'm your immediate past president, and my last job as that role will be to set up a slate of officers for next year. If anyone is interested in being an officer in this coming year, please let me know. I'll reach out to folks, but I'd love to hear for volunteers first. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Eggman McKenzie.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I do appreciate that. And so, as Kate said, if you are interested in taking a part of the leadership of our AM Lockport Club, please reach out to Kate and she'll make sure that your name is part of our ballot for that. And are there any other announcements this morning?
I have a question.
Sure.
It goes to our personal lives. What we do a lot is the Celtic Festival. And I'm just wondering if people could, what are your thoughts about the festival? So many people are doing event canceling. What do people think about the events canceling? Is it something that you think or they should go on?
I think they're doing it all prematurely.
We need to talk about it right now. I agree, Phil, that things are somewhat premature. Maybe during post-toasting, send us an email.
Yep.
Sounds good. Yeah, we have. Well, what I am going to do is, if you would like to stay for post toasties, we will remain on the feed. But for right now, what I'm going to do for those of you that do have to depart, either for work or whatever the case may be, thank you. It's definitely worth getting up for. And as the Golden Girls would say, enjoy your morning. Thank you for joining us. See you all. Open house next week. Okay. Now, the meeting is officially